we have a very special guest, Mary Debono from the Debono movement. And the chapter is going to be about developing awareness between horses and people.
Right? You're using your senses, right, to pick up these sometimes very subtle clues, right? And that gives you information, and sometimes it just feels like you don't know where it comes from. You just have a feeling, right? Because it's like you're processing it unconsciously. Yeah. So I think that's wonderful that you have that. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I will give a little bit background about what made me do that. Okay, I was doing the Gala certification, and as part of it, I was going to a place in Arizona. I was working over there with few rescue horses that they have. With somatic experience method with
Oh,
horses,
uh-huh.
and they have several horses that was they rescue them, and then I got the luck to work with them like physically. They had a vibrate plate, like an Equine, and while using that device, I was discovering a lot of shifts that happened emotionally, physically, spiritually with those horses and
Wow.
with me combined.
Yeah. That's
So
wonderful.
I started to read, and I discovered Linda Tellington John's work, and I
Uh-huh.
was going deeply more about Moshe Feldenkrais's work,
Yes.
which I was remembering. But when I saw there is a person who does um, awareness work for horses and for people, it was for me very, very, very important, even just to be acknowledged that or to see that. And then I was thought I have to do something for all of those horses. I saw a movie on the kill pens, and I said I have to do something for people to be aware that there could be a different way.
Yes, that's wonderful. Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I thought to interview you because I think it's a very unique perspective by what I learned up until now, which it's a little, I'm sure we can dive in more, but
Yes. And i- if I can interject a
yeah,
moment, Omer. So I think what makes the approach that I do unique is the fact that I'm helping the human and the animal, and often at the same time. So, in other words, that the work is designed to bring self awareness to the human, like to help them develop that capacity. And at the same time, the hands on work with the animal is helping both the horse and the human. So, yeah, and I think that oftentimes people feel like they have to choose, like they're working with their horse, they're helping their horse, or they're just focusing on themselves, but it actually can be a combination, which I find to be really, really powerful because it has like a synergistic effect. The more we improve our own awareness, the better able we are to help the horse, and the horse is processing the changes, right? I So one of the things I say very often, Omer, is how we move, how we breathe, and how we direct our attention are felt by our horse, and they all shape our interactions with our horse. And for example, your underlying sense of either ease or effort, is plays a huge role in shaping your interaction with your horse. Like the horse feels that. So changing those things, helping a person develop an easier way to move, helping a person develop a way of breathing that's more relaxed and appropriate for the activity, and helping them direct their attention, right? All those things will then help change how they interact with their horse, help improve how they interact with the horse, and how the horse experiences them. That's what it's about. The horse will experience you differently when you change your movement, when you change what you're thinking about, when you change how you're breathing, your horse will experience you differently. It's really fascinating, isn't it? Like it's just so, I mean, and that's why horses, I mean, we just love being around them, right? And part of that is too because they give us such wonderful feedback and they are so sensitive and they pick up on these things. So it's, yeah, we're really
So,
lucky. We're really lucky to be around them.
so better together and to breathe and to move and to redirect our energy. I want,
Yeah. Yeah, in other words, because a lot of the times we aren't even aware of how we're directing our attention. Like maybe we're with our horse and we're worried we're not doing something right. Okay. Or we're thinking about, oh, that girl at the barn that doesn't like me, that gives me a dirty look, or, whatever it happens to be. Or, and a lot of times there's so much going on, maybe a lot of times self-critical thoughts, who knows? Or maybe we're upset at our horse, like we're frustrated, right? All those things. So, they detract from our experience with our horse. They detract from our horse's experience with us. So once we learn to be more mindful, more aware, we can direct our attention more intentionally.
so
Yeah, and that will change.
mindfulness and awareness. I want to go a little bit back to the start. Tell me a little bit
Yes.
about your background with horses, what it
Okay.
was for you in the start, and then we will progress from there.
So I'm one of those kids who was born wanting a horse. Now, I was born in New York City, and it's not like a place where there's pastures and you have horses all over, but I wanted to be around horses. Like that's my first memories. And we didn't get a horse right away. That wasn't practical. Eventually, my family, when I was like 7, we got a dog who I adored because I always wanted to be around animals. The poor dog, I treated him like a horse in many ways. I set up cavaletti, I set up all jumps. I mean, but I was always from a very, very young age studying about horses. So I was very much also, very attracted to all animals, including dogs, and I helped my dad train our dog. We competed with our dog, we did all kinds of things. And I was studying about canine movement and equine movement. So even as a young kid, I was like fascinated by health and movement of horses. And I was very lucky because as a young child, we were able to take riding lessons. So I was able to go to and then two of my sisters were also interested. And then my dad also got very interested in horses. So that was great. And so I grew up with this idea of learning all you can about animals. My dad would buy all these books. I would go to the library and get all these books, adult books, not fairy tales about horses, but actual texts about horses. And and my dad and I would have very adult conversations even at a young age. And one of the games we would play, and I think this you may have heard this on the podcast, was my dad and I would go to a horse show and we would position ourselves by the fence. And these were hunter jumper shows. So they were mostly like open jumper type shows. And 3 strides before the particular jump we were looking at, my dad and I would predict, to the best of our knowledge, what was going to happen. In other words, would the horse jump cleanly? Would they tap, a hind foot? Would they tap a front foot? Would there be a refusal or run out, whatever? And our rule was we had to call it 3 strides before the fence. So that taught me at a young age to be really observant, to notice little things that I probably didn't even put my finger on, like probably like an imbalance in the rider, more tension in a rein, things like that, as well as the horse's movement and how they were, you know, uh, experiencing this whole jumping competition. So that was something that was fun to do with my dad, and it also trained me to pay attention. And there was another thing I got from my dad. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago at a very, luckily he was very elderly when he passed, but he always rode. Once he got into horses, he just like was really into it. So we had a lot in common. And what was great was, he would share, he was an engineer and he was very analytical and he had an intuitive side. And I think that balance was really, really good because he was really good at predicting. He was really good at noticing horses. And he used to tell me, you feel it. You feel it when the horse is going to have a problem. And he was very much into that. I remember he always bought me horse books for my birthday, and including ones about talking to horses, like how people would have like telepathy, like communication with animals, with horses in general, in specific. And so I think I was really blessed to have a dad as good as he was, and that he was again very analytical on the one hand, really strong engineering mind, and on the other hand, he was very much open to sensing things, to having gut feelings about things. And I think that balance is really nice to have. Yeah. So
You're
that's so
talking to
that's so that's
horses? You
what's
believe that
that?
it's possible to talk to horses?
Oh, so if we're going to go down this road, put your seatbelt on. So,
Ready to
yeah,
go.
are you open to this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, what's really interesting is, again, starting at a very young age, I would have dreams about horses. Other things too, but mostly horses. And they would be very specific dreams about horses that I didn't even know. And I would find out that well, I'll give you an example. I wasn't that young, but it was early in my career as a person who works with helping horses improve their movement and well-being. I would say have on my calendar for the next day a horse I had never seen before. Never saw the owner, never knew anything about the horse other than the woman or the man signed up, wanted me to come work with the horse. Didn't happen all the time by any means, but occasionally I would have a dream. I'm thinking of this one in particular that, interestingly enough, it was my dad in the dream. It was my dad, myself, and the horse. And my dad said to me, he was alive at the time, but in the dream, he said to me, look at the right hind, look at the right hind, look how, and then look at the lower back. And he was giving me all this advice. Now, I didn't know anything about this horse. I didn't even know what color the horse was. When I would get to the place, like in this particular instance, that was the exact horse from my dream. Exactly. And because I was primed from my dream, I knew what to look for. And I'll tell you one that was even more dramatic than that. I was at a Feldenkrais conference. This was back in 1994 up in Berkeley, California. And I was in my hotel room, went to sleep. I had this amazing dream about this beautiful chestnut mare with big flowing mane and big forelock. And in the dream, 3 different vets show up and they all say this horse will never be sound. And they're all looking at an x-ray. And they're looking at an x-ray of the horse's front leg. And you can see the suspensory ligament and it's like white like bone in the x-ray, in the radiograph. And they're all 3 are saying this horse will never be sound, she needs to be retired. And then in the dream I walk into the room and say, oh, I can help her, and in 5 minutes the horse is fine. Now that wasn't very realistic, but I was thinking, why did I have that dream? Well, this was back in 1994. I didn't have a cell phone, but I went and I checked my voicemail messages for my business. There was a woman on the phone. I had never heard of this woman. I had never met this, nothing. And she was really upset. And she said, you're my last hope. She said, 3 different vets have told me that my horse will never be sound. She's been dealing with a chronic suspensory ligament injury for, I think it was 10 months at that point. And everyone's telling me to retire her, but some people said that before I make a decision, I should talk to you. And I thought, oh my goodness, like that dream was so specific. It was so specific. How did that come through? I have no idea. All I know is I called the woman back and I said to her, I I have a feeling your horse is going to be okay. I said, but we'll make an appointment and I'll come. And sure enough, and can I tell you what I did to help the horse?
Yeah.
I noticed, now it didn't take 5 minutes by any means, it took much longer. However, what I noticed is although the horse, and I'm thinking it was left front, I have a blog post about it. I could double check my facts later, but I think it was left front. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. The horse was off on her left front. That's where she had the suspensory ligament injury. However, when she was standing still, she actually put more weight onto her left front. And when I was putting my hands all over her body and really feeling her, which is something I teach, like everyone should be doing that all the time, I noticed that her muscling was very different from one side to the other. Even though she had been out of work for several months, it's still, so I thought, wow, this is a result of a long-standing habit she has of overusing that leg. Even though when she was trotting, she was off on it. But it was, and so I helped her, and I don't know if we have time to go into the details, but you never, for example, if you see that, because it's not that rare for a horse to be weighting one side or one diagonal or one leg more than the other, but it causes a lot of problems over time. However, I didn't try to push her onto the other leg. That would have put all kinds of red flags in her brain, right? Her nervous system would have said, no, 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 I can't do that. But I helped her by, first of all, supporting the muscles, helping them let go, and then working with her rib cage, her sternum and her ribs. I helped her feel how she could be on each of her legs, like to a little bit more and off it again before it was a problem, before the alarm bells went off. And she went on to learn how to be balanced over all 4 legs, and her suspensory ligament completely healed. And in a short while, she was sound again. She was sound the rest of her life. She lived to be into her mid 20s. And she unfortunately died of a heart attack when she was galloping in pasture, which isn't the worst way to go. And one of the vets who said she wouldn't be sound again was so intrigued. She shadowed me for a little while because she said, "What did you do?" And I showed her many of the things. And she said, "What you're looking for is they're subclinical. In other words, you're looking for things before they create a lameness." She said, "We're not trained that way in veterinary school, right? Something has to be inflamed or damaged in some way where the horse is showing obvious problems. But what we're doing in this work is something before that. In other words, we're looking for those subtle imbalances that can literally make or break a horse, right? And the same is true for us. We have our own habits. So that one was, though, like, and by the way, the woman and I got to be best friends. We got to be super, super close, the woman who owned the horse. So I was in that horse's life and the woman's life for many years until they both unfortunately passed several years ago. But, I don't know, Omer, why I had those dreams, like, right? And to me, the communications sometimes come in person, but they more often come in dreams. And it could be because I shut off my sensor, that tells me, oh, that can't possibly be right. But I've had many dreams with horses that were very, very detailed that I had no way of knowing that information beforehand. So I don't know how to explain that. I like to be very scientific. So I used to never mention that kind of stuff because I don't want people, you know what I mean? There's a certain,
Yes.
you know what I mean? But I think they can live alongside each other. We just don't maybe have all the answers.
Few stuff. First of all, Milton Erickson says the problem is never the problem. I think
Oh, yes.
there is a very wise and related to the stuff that you said. And the other, do you know, for example, there was conducted research that Edgar Casey was
Mm,
getting
mhm.
a lot of readings. We go to sleep and then he's asking questions for people, and he discovered a lot of stuff that after that, medically wise, was accurate. But in one of his book, he says that in a day that there is a train crash, scientifically less people go up on the train. So somehow
Oh,
inside of us,
interesting.
there is a
Oh.
mechanism that
Mm.
work differently. And even if we are taking, I don't know, Young or a lot of the
Mhm.
people that build our psychology, our William James was a participant in a community that researched the future, like
Ah.
seeing the future.
Oh,
Or the
wow.
CIA have
Yeah.
protocols about
Right.
uh,
Right.
about remote viewing. So there is a way, for example, and I don't know why, but there was showing by research that people that are praying for something,
Oh, yes. Yes.
if few
It.
people are praying for that, there is more chance that the person will be cured, and it doesn't matter their religions. There could be
Yes.
in any religion at all.
I
Just pure
have read those
intention.
studies. Yes. Isn't that amazing?
It's
It's
amazing.
really amazing. But it to me too, Omar, it shows us, which is fine with me, that there's so much we don't really know, and I'm okay with that. In other words, maybe in my lifetime we won't know. I don't, but and a lot of people use this example, the whole idea of germ theory. That was so foreign at first. People, how could anything be a problem that you couldn't see, right? Like people didn't see germs, little microscopic, microbes and things. But then it became accepted, and now everyone knows you wash your hands, and surgeons certainly scrub up before they operate on somebody. But there was a time when that protocol was never followed because nobody believed it. So I always think like there's so much that we don't know. That's why I think it's good to keep an open mind, and it's okay to, uh, you know, to explore things that you may not have the scientific proof for, or the scientific explanation.
Whatever works. If it's work, I
Right,
think
exactly.
the
If it's
attitude
working,
of being
yes, yes,
being
yes.
scientific, even about spiritual stuff. For example, I discovered, I don't know why or I don't know how, but if I'm working with like energy work
Hmm.
thing, I can go in the middle of the barn in the day that I'm doing meditation, and all of the horses are licking and chewing and releasing. I didn't know. When I treat one horse, suddenly another horse is releasing something. So there is a field.
Yes, yes. We've seen that a lot in my work as well. Yes, yes. Where, yeah, yeah, that people will it's happened to me many times and it's happened to my students as well. Well, they'll be working with one horse and then all these other horses are having that same kind of release. Yeah. Omar, I'm going to stop you for a second if you don't mind. I I don't think this recorded.
It's recorded, but in a weird way, uh, we have. I don't know. I bought a Zoom before the meeting, and somehow it's maybe connected to another account. So we have
Oh,
40
okay.
minute limit. So we will do more and more, and
Oh,
I will
okay.
edit
Okay.
later, whatever
Okay.
is
Okay. Yeah, then I
necessary.
probably should have hosted it because I have a pro account. We could have gone longer, but okay, because it's showing me that it's not
I have a pro account also. I don't
Oh,
know
it does
what
say
is.
recording. You're correct. It says recording up there, but not down here. That's funny. Okay. Okay,
I
that's
have
fine. I'm
another.
sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure you were getting what what you hoped
Yeah,
for.
yeah. I'm getting what because it have the weird sense of something that's meant to be. So
Okay.
I'm getting
Okay.
what I
I
want,
like
even
that.
if
I
it's
like that.
gonna
Okay,
go bye
good.
bye and I don't know. But I have
I
another
love that.
question
Yes, please.
for you, and it is like, what is the lessons or the spiritual lessons that horses teaches you in your life?
Oh, how much time do you have?
As much as
I'm joking. I'm
necessary,
joking.
and
Okay.
I'm willing to stay even more.
Okay. Um, gosh, there are so many. Just like thinking about what we just spoke about, this idea that there's something beyond us, right? Like, how did I get that information about those horses? Right? And I have many other stories like them. Like, how did that happen? So, I one of the lessons that's been big for me is they teach me to let go of always knowing why something happened. So, in other words, they free me in a way from having to scientifically explain it, right? To say sometimes, you sense, you experience something, and that's enough. That's enough. It doesn't have to be explained away. So that's one of the things. Also, that okay, I'm going to go here. Um, Connection is more than the physical body. In other words, I can be with my horse and have a wonderful time and feel them and be with them physically. And then when they pass away, I still can feel connected with them and I can still have experiences where I feel their presence. I feel them. So it's again, I think it's really helpful in opening us up as humans. I think a lot of people, I'm not alone in having these experiences. And, that those are a couple of the lessons.
Dive
And I
into
would,
it, how it's
yes,
opening
please.
up. Because, how I will say it, I have a background as a competitive rider in reining, for
Okay.
example,
Yes.
and also did English. In the competition world, somehow people not always even opening. I heard the podcast with Casey Derry about him working with a chiropractor, him and the same chiropractor for his horses.
Oh,
So
yeah. Okay.
we,
Uh-huh.
we are kind of in an age that everything is start to open up. But my trainer in my past years when I competed, he was one of the best in Israel,
Hmm.
didn't believe in chiropractic work
Yeah.
at all.
Hmm.
He said it's nice for the horses. I'm willing to give them a good time, but it's not more than a good time. And I'm
Mm.
asking like how, or if you have a stories that can represent.
Well, okay. Okay. So I think this might help. So I don't do chiropractic, right? But I do work that was informed by the work of Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais, and I call it Debono Moves. And the work helps you feel like to tune into your horse more. So yes, it helps your horse, you know, perform better. Okay, there's that. But it goes well beyond that because you start to have a conversation. I call it a tactile or kinesthetic conversation. So in other words, you're using your hands, you're using other parts of your body sometimes too, right? Depends how you're positioned, but you're having a conversation and it's not a monologue. It's not me telling the horse, "Oh, bend this way, do this, do this." It's I'm listening and adapting and adjusting depending on what the how the horse is responding to me. And so to me, there is no denying that that's good for both the human and the horse. So it's not that someone from the outside, and again, this is chiropractic can be wonderful, and other therapies can be wonderful for the horses and can help them. And nothing, in my opinion, takes the place of you having a conversation with your own horse rather than having always an outside person come in, like an outside professional come in.
Good
Yes,
how?
that's
Give examples.
yes. Okay.
I
So
believe
I've been
you, and I even can feel it
yes.
when I'm touch horses. But
Yes. Okay.
I want
S
the audience to be able to see, feel, give
okay.
taste of
So
it.
so okay. So you can have a wonderfully talented equine body worker come in and they can work with your horse and they can help your horse feel so much better. Okay? And that's wonderful. That's fantastic. You can also learn how to do something like my approach is called Debono Moves, right? You can learn how to do that with your horse. And then for example, because you feel it under your hands, oh, this is why my horse doesn't bend to the left as easily as to the right. You feel the difference in their body. You feel the difference in their responses, even just emotionally. Even if you can't feel minor differences in how the ribs bend, what the sternum does, you start to feel, oh, when I ask this question, and the question is, does this move easily? You get a different response. So this puts you in such close communication with your horse. You can't replicate this. And then you can take that sensitivity to the saddle. So then when you're riding your horse, you're using your whole body to support your horse, to ask questions, to be really tuned in. Because this is what I see a lot of people doing, Omer, and this is a horrible thing to do to a horse is, for example, if a horse is quote unquote stiffer on one side, what do a lot of people do? They'll use stronger aids, right? Use a leg more strongly, maybe a whip, maybe a spur, maybe a rein aid more strongly. They'll start like ramping up the pressure to try to get the horse to do it. But if you had been using not you, but if one had been using their hands on the horse first without any saddle or anything on, and you felt like, oh, wow, feel the muscles on this side are different than this and the way they respond, you would never break that horse's trust by trying to force them to bend in the way that they can't possibly do easily because the horse may comply, but compliance is not connection. So for me, I'm interested in working with people that want a deep connection with their horse. Yes, they might want to compete and do all those things, but they do it with kindness and connection. And so, hello again.
Now we have as much as time as we want. I find out what was
Oh,
the problem.
oh, okay. Okay. Are we good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. There we go. So, yeah, so there's a different level of engagement with a horse when you take the time to have your hands on the horse and to feel things. And I always tell my students this, you're asking questions with your hands. You're not making demands. And that is the way to build trust because the horse senses that you're supporting them where they need it, like physically supporting with your hands and allowing them to let go of tension. That is how you build trust. The way to break trust is when you're trying to force the horse to comply, right? And you're not giving any weight at all to the fact that either physically and or emotionally the horse isn't ready to do what you're asking, or they don't understand what you're asking, or physically can't do it. That is how you break trust, is you're trying to get them to do it. So again, compliance is not connection. If you want connection, to me, it starts with putting your hands on your horse. Even something as simple as what I call a scan with your hands. So there's something we do in the Feldenkrais method for humans, okay? And usually at the start of a Feldenkrais movement lesson for a person, for a human, you would lie on the floor and you would kind of scan your body, right? You would notice, well, how do my shoulder blades touch the floor, the back of my ribs, my lower back? Oh, maybe one side's a little tighter than the other. Oh, maybe my pelvis feels crooked on the floor. And it's not to correct, it's not to criticize yourself, it's just to notice. And you go through your whole body and then you notice later if that changes. And the floor is what gives you feedback. It gives you kinesthetic feedback. In other words, you can feel your back more clearly if you're lying on the floor rather than sitting up with nothing touching your back, right? So what you can help your horse experience something differently if you run your hands very slowly down your horse. Like if your horse is okay with you touching the upper neck, near the pole, you can just feel and you take your time and you notice, oh, is this side a little different than this side? And you may not do the whole horse at once, but you start to have, you really feel your horse and you notice. And then I teach people something we call muscle supports, where it's simple but very, very effective. How to use your hands to relieve the tension in the horse's muscle. It's like we call it taking over the work of the muscle. So the nervous system of the horse can decide, oh, I can relax those muscles. They can let go. And so something as simple as that, then, and you can do this, you can incorporate it into your grooming and your tacking up. And now suddenly you're so much more connected with your horse than if you just had brushed your horse, tacked your horse up, and went off for a ride. So to me, again, it's great if you have people coming in that are professional, but there's so much that one can learn to do to help their own horse, and it doesn't have to take a long amount of time. Right? It can be some fairly simple things that they can do, but it does take awareness. It does take attention. You can't be, doing a scan while you're talking to your friend across the barn aisle, right? You have to be paying attention to the horse. And this is where we spoke earlier about the idea of, how we direct our attention. That's something a horse notices. Well, now you're putting your attention truly on your horse in a way that isn't asking anything of the horse. Right? It's appreciating and supporting the horse and helping them feel better in body and mind and help you feel more connected to them. And isn't that why we're around horses, right? Like we want that feeling, which is so amazing, of being connected with a horse. To me, it's just a beautiful feeling, right? So I hope that gives you a little insight into why I think it's so important for everyday equestrians to learn how to touch their horses in a meaningful way. besides the padding and all of that, but, and the scratching of the withers, which are great things to do, but there's more than that. And I'm fascinated, Omer, with the whole idea of, how we're constantly stimulating different receptors on the body. And, there's a particular class of receptors called the CLTMs. And what's fascinating about them is that they're processed in the emotional part of the brain, which is unusual because a lot of the receptors that register pressure and things like that, they're processed in a different part of the brain. So what they've discovered with that mammals in general have CLTM receptors, and they're stimulated by slow, light, kind of stroking contact at room temperature. So if you did it with something very cold or something very hot, they wouldn't be stimulated. And what's fascinating about those receptors are they release, a lot of the feel-good hormones and oxytocin, which is the bonding, helps you bond. And scientists believe this is an evolutionary adaptation because, mammal mothers instinctively either use their tongues or whatever to do similar kinds of stroking, right? And that helps the young, the baby, to bond and want to be with the mother. So if you think about that with a horse, it's like you can imagine that maybe that's what you're stimulating as well. This idea that there'd be like a mutual attraction between you and your horse. That there's a cooperation that can be developed by paying attention to the horse in this way, which to me elevates the interaction. I'm not about forcing horses to do things. I'm not interested in that. I'm about, can we have a meaningful interaction that's mutually enjoyable for us?
I have a question. First of all, I love what you spoke about the questions, to ask questions with the
Yes.
hands. I think it's an amazing concept. Uh, what is the right question to ask? It was part of how I started to do therapeutic work with horses. And like when I took it to the body work with horses, it was, I think the what is the right question is it's a very good
Right.
question to ask and
It's a
then to listen. But what are the demand? You said awareness and you said attention. Okay,
yes.
or even said in a way attention without tension. Like when I'm in
Yes. Yes.
silence, I can hear inside.
Hmm.
But I'm curious more about or what we need to give up for us to be able to come to that, or what is the attitude you spoke about curiosity in the start.
Oh,
Like
yes.
elaborate a little bit more about what's needed from us, because I can see you are unique in that regard. But if someone
Okay, that's a
wanted to
great
develop that,
question, Omer. Okay, so that's a great question. So I would say, well, first of all, I do want to underscore curiosity because I do think curiosity is one of our greatest tools. Like that is a must, is to be curious and not judgmental. It's about being curious. Why is this way? Not, oh my goodness, it shouldn't be that way. Right? It's so curiosity is fantastic. But as far as what to give up, I would say number one, to give up the sense that you need to correct something, that you need to judge. So giving up and and I'll be honest. I can sometimes be a judgy person. You can ask my husband, right?
yeah.
I might find fault occasionally. Um, However, that is something that I'm actively working on, and I think it's so important. And certainly when I'm with horses and others, I think, well, can I let go of the need to correct, to judge, right? That these things are like the change. So Dr. Feldenkrais, Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais, who originated the Feldenkrais method, right? He always used to say, like, he would do this miraculous work with people, like miraculous work. And then he would say, and people would say, "How did you do that?" And he would say, "I didn't do anything. The person did it, he or she did it. And people would say, "What are you talking about? They came in, they couldn't walk, now they're walking." But what he was getting at was he was just the facilitator. He wasn't trying to impose what he wanted on that individual. And often, so what he was doing was he was creating a learning environment. He used his hands to create a learning environment. And that's what I aim to do in my work as well. And it's this idea of giving up the need to make something happen. And that can be hard for someone who likes to control things. I could raise my hand, right? I like to control. I would like things to be a certain way, right? Like many of us would. But can we create, instead of creating um, forceful things like you need to be this way, my horse needs to be this way, and need for this to happen, that we can create a learning environment where we both can be enriched, we both can learn something. And then if it resonates with the horse's nervous system, if the horse's nervous system feels safe and that this is a better option, they will improve, they will change if you give them the right information. But it does require us to that was a really insightful question, Omer. No one's ever asked me that before. But it really does require us to let go of the need to judge and correct and control, and to be okay with, like, we're going to facilitate learning in the best way we can.
So by letting go of the result or our
Yes.
perspective
Yes.
on the result, and then by creating
Yes.
environment that are allow teaching or allow curiosity or allow all of that from both sides of the equation, it's it's created. It sounds amazing. The
It's
the the other question that came up regard to that, you wrote about you have a book about dogs
Mhm.
and the combination about horses and the combination with people. Tell me a little bit about how I say it. Like they saying in NLP that genius is kind of the ability to change perspective or point
Yes.
of view on stuff. I want to be to learn a little bit about how you did the development of your movement, or you called it Debono movement.
Yes.
How did you develop your method?
Okay. So it actually started when I was really, really young, because I got my own horse when I was a teenager, but before then, and I was taking riding lessons and all that, and just always wanted to be around horses. I would always imagine myself as a horse. So it was pretty interesting because if I like as closely as I could, I imagined I had four legs. So when I ran track, I would win. I would jump the highest, I would run the fastest if I imagined I was a horse. And I mentioned earlier, I believe, that I was studying equine and canine movement from a young age. So like biomechanics, things like that. So I was always very, very curious about how animals moved. And I started just putting my hands on them. And so, because instead of just grooming them with a brush, I would put my hands on them and I started playing around. For example, I was always very, very like attracted to the sternum and the ribs. And that was something that for many years, it's only been fairly recently that people have acknowledged the role of the sternum in equine and canine movement. It's as a matter of fact, when I was years ago, when I was studying all kinds of anatomy, they didn't even show the sternum because it was like not even important. But I was always fascinated with it. So when I started studying the Feldenkrais method, so I was already doing my own work. And full disclosure, I also incorporated energy work. I was trained in energy work from a long time ago. I incorporated that as well. I was always very aware of my own state when I was working with an animal. So that was all part.
We are going to the spiritual side of it, and that's okay.
Okay.
But like,
Okay. Do you want me to jump into it right now then? Okay. So this is a dog example I'm going to give you. Um, One day a man brought this dog into my office for me to work with. He was an 11-year-old Australian Shepherd, and he was dragging his hind legs. He had been to the vet many times. They said there was nothing they could do for him, that it was an age-related thing, and that was it. But a few of the man's friends knew about me, and so they encouraged him to take the dog to me. So this dog was so wonderful, and he was so sweet, and he I had a mat in my office for the dogs, and he laid down on it, and I was putting my hands on him, and I had my hands, I remember exactly, I was supporting his lower back muscles, his what I call a lumbar lift. And as I was doing that, I just was overcome with this sense of gratitude. I just felt so grateful, so appreciative that this dog was like literally putting himself in my hands. And it was just such a beautiful experience. And at that moment, when I was feeling so much gratitude, I had what I recognize is like a mystical experience. My heart felt like it was on fire. It was the most incredible feeling. It was unbelievable and it was incredibly strong. And after that moment, I could clearly feel, I think I could clearly feel what Rocky the dog was feeling. In other words, I knew because, like, if I would support the muscles in a particular direction or support a limb in a particular direction, this feeling in my heart would grow. It would get more pronounced. Maybe if I switched my hands another way, it would lessen. So it was like a barometer for me. It gave me, it was an indicator of, oh yeah, you're really on the right track here. You're really on the right track there. And now I will say it also was technically a very good session. In other words, I was using rollers under the dog, with the dog lying on the side. I was using what we call artificial floor. I did a lot of very technical methods that I learned from Dr. Feldenkrais's work. At the end of the session, the dog stood up. I supported him at first, and he walked around as if nothing was wrong. And I was surprised at the improvement, and so was his owner was really surprised. And it was a beautiful experience. And I thought it was unique to that dog. But what I discovered, Omer, and I think this is important, is that state of gratitude changed my heart rate variability. We know that from all the studies that HeartMath has done. We know how being in a state of gratitude heightens us physically and emotionally, like our performance, our cognitive performance even improves. And I feel like it made me more sensitive. And I will say, I never had quite that level of experience as I did with Rocky, like that mind-blowing experience. However, I learned to use the state of gratitude to help me be more in tune with the animals. And I teach that now. It is a big part of my work. It's one of the first things that students learn is how to enter into the state of gratitude and how to use it to, it's sort of like because you end up, it's loving energy, basically what gratitude is, isn't it? Right? So if you can have a synergistic combination of loving energy and the more technical aspects of the hands-on work, if you can merge them, to me you get amazing results. You can get amazing results. So that is that is something that I learned, that okay, my state is so important to help the animal. And so it became something I intentionally taught my students after that moment. And this was almost 30, yeah, probably 25, 30 years ago that happened with Rocky. So I've been teaching gratitude as an integral part of the work ever since, because it was so profound.
Joe Dispenza that work with HeartMath also says the
Hmm.
attitude is the best, gratitude is the best attitude that's
Yes,
possible. Uh,
I believe that.
and I think there is another key that you are saying is, and I will love your input more about that, but like it's the how much of your teaching is state related and which state you are working on
Oh,
developing your student? Like, what are the lessons from life in the bonus method for people
yes.
and
Yeah,
even
I'm a
for
lot.
horses in treatment?
Well, I think they all, it's all state. In other words, that's always a part of it. It's always a part of it. I can't separate the two. And this is why I'll tell you something else too, Omer, that when I teach people this work, which I do all the time, the Feldenkrais method for them, like even, away from the horses, like just for them, is also an integral part of it. In other words, that is a great vehicle for developing self-awareness, the Feldenkrais method. So I don't teach people how to do the hands-on work with the animals without also separately taking them through awareness through movement lessons from the Feldenkrais method, because that will help them release unnecessary tension. It'll help them to embody the work. They'll understand it more. They'll be able to transmit a sense of ease and effortlessness to the horse and a feeling of safety, and it'll improve their life too. So it's yeah, so I would say really all of the lessons in my work are related to how the person is being in the world, how they feel. And as you know, physical and emotional are part of each other, right?
So
They're
first embodiment and awareness through movement, and then it's like the scale of the pyramid of dressage. Or it's a
oh,
condition to
yes.
be part of. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, that is a big part of my work for sure. Yes.
I have another question that's related to, because all of it started from the belief that if people were more aware about working with horses, especially rescue horses, they will have
Hmm.
less problem and less, and even like more, if something is not getting better, it's decline. So I'm asking
Oh,
if
yeah,
you have
like
any stories about rescues horses.
yes, I'll tell you a story about a horse who was my horse. He was a rescue, and so I adopted him. Gosh, it's been over 20 years now. And he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but I had him for many, many years. And he was considered a really quote unquote bad horse. He was considered stubborn, belligerent, dangerous, you name it. And I never saw him like that. I knew he had a lot of trauma. I actually was able to, he was passed around from person to person, and I was able to track down many people that had him or knew him, or, put me in touch with people who had him. And people just couldn't deal with him. He was very sensitive. He was actually, you mentioned about being a reining competitor. He was bred for reining. He was a quarter horse who was bred for reining. A lot of those horses are very sensitive, the reining horses. And he was very sensitive and then very, very badly abused. I won't even tell you the horrific things that this one man in particular did to him. But nonetheless, I adopted him, and he went from being everyone thinking he's a belligerent, stubborn horse to people asking me how I got him to be so enthusiastic. And he taught me a lot, because he taught me so much about, meeting a horse where they're at and providing a safe environment for them. His name was Breeze. In Breeze's case, that meant that he had freedom to run away from me. So I would work with him in a very, very large arena, very large, and no halter, no rope, no flag, nothing, nothing. Just me and Breeze, and he was free to leave. And, I little by little, I was able to win his confidence, and we would do these incredible, what I call liberty play, where we would just have almost invisible communication. It's like he read my mind, that horse. He was so sensitive. So that was a case where that horse could have come to a really bad end, because so many people were unwilling to take the time with him and to understand, and to understand his point of view. And I think this is a problem we all have to some degree, maybe, that, you know, even a human to human, I don't know exactly how you see the world. You don't know exactly how I see the world. I, you know, you don't know exactly how your horse sees the world, or your dog, or whoever, right? We all have different filters, or we have different ways of using our senses. We have different experiences, different histories. But if we can take the time to wonder, to be curious about how does Omer see the world? How does this dog see the world? How does this horse see the world? To me, then we can make a connection, and we can then work from a state where we both feel safe. So I think that working with horses, especially rescue all horses, but it can be so rewarding, incredibly rewarding. It's just, yeah, it's a wonderful gift they give us, right? That we can work with them.
You said something that is amazing. I think it will be a better world if people will be able to be curious about the other, and other could be dog, other could be horse, other could
Yes.
be person.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if there is like, if you're understanding the other side perspective, there is no space for a conflict, or there is a space
Right.
for
Right.
a
Right.
flow
Right. Right. Right.
in,
Isn't
in,
that,
in a way.
I really hope, I actually just did a podcast episode today about something similar, this idea of our perception of things and what we expect, and how we're conditioned in a way to see things a certain way, right? And so we have to also recognize that the person I'm talking to may have been conditioned in a different way. So they're actually seeing things differently than me. They're experiencing life differently than me. And certainly our horses and our dogs and our other critters, right? They're experiencing life differently. And if we can take a moment to, just like you said, be curious about, well, how are they experiencing it? And even to learn, even learning more about, and we're talking mostly about horses, but how horses sense their environment. Like that's important to remember, like to learn more about that. So we can even, just if we want to daydream that we are a horse, like I always did when I was a kid, right? How would we be experiencing the environment? And I think that can inform then how we interact with horses.
It's going back to something you said earlier about there is a technique in Kabbalistic work, Kabbalistic meditation. It's called Hergesh Azulai, the feeling of the others.
Mm,
And by going to that perspective of the
yes.
other person, you can actually feel him and actually even influence his work. And it's working in other
Oh,
modalities. It's in
oh,
Silva method, they do that.
oh, okay, okay.
There
I'll have
is
to look
few
more
modal
into that. That is fascinating. Yes, yes.
few spiritual modalities that going into that. I have a question.
Mhm.
If you have like, I don't know if it's a regular practice or something that you do to your own spiritual growth.
Yes. Okay, so I do a number of things. I First of all, I do Feldenkrais awareness through movement. Now, you may not think that's spiritual, but for me it actually is. It's physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual. because it connects me more to myself. It's like I become more aware, right? So I can be truer to my values. You know, I can live my life in alignment with my values. I feel like the Feldenkrais method really helps me with that. That's one thing. I also take my dog on a really good hike every morning. And I love being out in nature, being with my dog. I mean, it's just to me, that is a time where I can just kind of let go of the worries of the world and just be simply present to what is. And I don't do it every day, but I do meditate. And I feel like my work is a spiritual practice as well, because a big part of my values is sharing this wonderful work. You know, I think about, Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais dedicated his whole life to developing a method. And I know personally it changed my life for the better. It's helped so many people that they've told me how much it helped them. And I'm kind of on a mission to share that work and my adaptation, Debono Moves with animals. So yeah, so doing this work, sometimes occasionally people will say, "Don't you ever think about retiring?" And it's like, "No. Like,
No.
why would I? No. Like, I'm just getting started, baby. Like, this is we're just getting started here." But to me, all of that is part of my spiritual practice.
So I'm seeing here a lot. First of all, to be a woman and a mission, like my job is a spiritual practice,
Hmm.
the right intention. It's not only what I'm doing for, it's for what I'm doing that, or what is the why behind everything that I'm doing.
Right,
Then
right. The why.
quality
Yes,
time. So you will have you're starting your day with fulfilling yourself in a way.
yes, yes, yes.
And the meditation is and I think I'm gonna ask a little bit more about I don't know if it's kind of if you need to put in a sentence what is the I'm gonna ask there is a model of purpose and they divided to few like what is my bliss, okay, which come from my pain usually, um, what is my message and what is my mission in the world. So if you take a second calmly, okay, let's start with what is the bliss in your work or
Oh, okay. So the beliefs in my work would be improvement is possible at virtually any stage of life or physical condition. And sometimes that those beliefs, excuse me, that improvement may not be exactly what you wanted. In other words, if you're working with a very elderly horse, for example, maybe they're not going to gallop again, but maybe they'll have a little more flexion in their joints where their feet can be trimmed in a more comfortable way. Or sometimes is, and as sad as this is, sometimes it's when an animal is getting to the end of their life, you're providing them with that bit of comfort, so that things are just a little bit easier for both of you. So that is something, and there's a phrase we say a lot in the Feldenkrais method, which is biological optimism. And that's a big part of this is this idea that we can always improve. We can grow new neurons, right? We can create new neural connections, and improvement is possible at any life stage or condition. Like till the end, you're taking a breath, things can get even if it's just a matter of providing a little bit more comfort. So that's yeah. So that
that's a
is
lot.
definitely a
That's a
belief.
bliss, not only belief, like absolutely bliss. And the other question is, what is your message? If there is anything that you could say
Mm,
into horse people, into owners.
yeah. Um, Okay, I'll reiterate something I said earlier. How you move, how you breathe, and how you direct your attention are all felt by your horse, and they're all shape your interactions with your horse. So this is something for us to remember, that how what we bring to our horse shapes our interaction with our horse, and it shapes like how the horse experiences us. And so those are things that are under our control, right? We can through the Feldenkrais method, we can move more easily. We can breathe in a more relaxed way, right? We can learn how to direct our attention. We can do all those things and have a more harmonious relationship with our horse, one that fulfills both of us, that brings enjoyment to both the person and the horse. So, yeah.
Wow. And if everything was possible, let's say you are getting okay, or God says, I'm in, what do
Okay.
you want
Ooh.
from that method to be for, like, you said you are a woman in a mission. I want to verify what
Yes.
is the mission.
Okay. Okay. So I would say that if I could help people feel that things could improve, that they have autonomy, they have agency to improve their lives, that they can trust their inner authority. If I can help people develop that, and that they can trust that they can learn how to help the animals in their lives as well. That this isn't about, some magical person with special gifts coming in and having to do everything, but if they're willing to take the time, they can change the quality of their life, and they can change and improve the quality of the lives of their animals as well.
That's a very unique answer because you didn't say they need to know it, or like you said, I want to help people feel it. And
Yes,
after
yes,
they feel
yes,
it,
yes.
life are not going to be the same. I just need to help them
Right.
to feel it.
Feel it. Exactly. Exactly. You caught that. Yes, for sure. Right. It's not to know it like in a book, right? Like it's to experience it, to sense it, to embody it. And then you can't unfeel that, right? So, yeah. So that is my mission, for people to recognize that.
I want to sign in to help. I don't know when or where or how, but like
Oh, you
in a way, I think the sensation of unity. Like right now, I'm
Mhm.
working on a book about riding into awareness,
Oh, I
which is
love
very
it.
similar
Yes,
to
yes. I
awareness
love it. Love the
through
title.
movement in a way.
Yes, yes, yes,
Eh,
yes. I love the title.
And
Yes.
and and I think after feeling oneness with horses, like the being one in mind, body, and even spirit. Like when they come in the dream, I can it resonate. Maimer, now
Yes.
I'm in Texas, Lubbock. She's coming into my dreams
Oh,
before the
wow.
podcast, and like
Yeah.
they have messages,
Yes, yes.
and I think it's a very 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 important. I have like the one last thing that I think we're going to finish with. If you have any, I heard you. And I want to be in a way to take it and to practice it or to feel it with my horse, with other horses. What do you suggest me to do, or to be, or to try, or to experiment for me to be opening up to that?
Well, as far as, I mean, I do have resources for people. Is that?
Resources or exercises, or like
Yes. In other words, I
how
have
to take it
resources
into the
where,
arena, into the field, and to feel it.
oh, okay, but they have to learn how to feel it, right? So, what I usually suggest people start with is I have a series of 3 short videos that are they're Feldenkrais inspired awareness through movement lessons that are done in a chair. And they help people feel because so many people are not balanced in their seat. So it starts the process of tuning into themselves. And you really have to tune into yourself before you can tune into your horse. And then I have other resources where I teach people how then to do the hands-on work with their horses. And also I have additional Feldenkrais lessons for them. But I would start, and so it's a free video series. If they go to marydebono.com/rider, that's where I would have people start. And then if they're curious, and I have other things I can send people about doing the hands-on work. But I do have online programs. I do teach in-person workshops, things like that. But I would start with them feeling themselves first, and then they'll be better able to help their horse with their hands. Yeah.
Know thyself. Amazing.
Yes, yes, yes. Know thyself. Exactly.
Wow. Thank you. It was an amazing experience for me to be able to be asking you all of those questions, and I think there
Oh,
is gold over here.
yeah, well, I loved it, Omer. I want to thank you so much. This was a huge pleasure for me. And yeah, I hope we continue to talk and, stay in touch. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. So, yes, thank you.